I hope you're hungry for nothing.
Elden Ring. It's a game mostly known for but it's also known for and it's even known for
Marika's tits.
It started with rumors of a mythical game created by Hidetaka Miyazaki of From Software in collaboration with George R.R. Martin of A Song in Ice and Fire that was open world and let you ride around on a horsey like Breath of the Wild. Years passed without any news until it was announced at E3 2019. The game was delayed multiple times and all the community had to go on were rumors. This went on so long that it became colloquially known as the hollowing. It got to the point that people began to pretend it was already out, claiming in fan reddits that they were having trouble on fictional bosses. The community even gave build advice to help others defeat the fake bosses. I cannot stress enough that the game had not even come out yet.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it. Not this time. No, not this time. It's totally made up.
But all of this was swiftly relieved in 2022 when the game finally arrived to high acclaim from both the From Software community and the larger gaming public. It sold 1 billion copies and just about everyone couldn't stop talking about how masterful the game was. The conversation about the game's difficulty became a notable feature as the less experienced players were playing a From Software game for the first time. It was a disaster.
I don't know what any of this shit is and I'm fucking scared.
But also a masterpiece. But either way,
And there was much rejoicing.
after a little while, the rumors began to spread of a mythical DLC for Elden Ring, and if/when the studio would begin production. Had they started production already? It's hard to say.
Not this time. It never happened. It's false. It never happened. It's a fake.
But for the longest time, the rumors hardly mattered because we all had Elden Ring to play. There were speedruns abusing this weird glitch. Then there were speedruns after the banning of such a glitch. There were challenge runs, no-hit runs, everything under the sun. This period of time also gave rise to the lore video. A hero would emerge in Vati Vidya, a YouTuber that made his entire channel around digging up even the most minute details about the game and the lore implications wherein. Elden Ring is perfect for such a dive because the story elements of the game are mostly optional. There are tons of NPCs with diverse quest lines. There are cutscenes with extra information. There are even secrets, puzzles, and hidden boss fights. What more could one ask for? However, knowing all these things isn't the most essential thing, as you can play the game with the express purpose of beating all the bosses and winning the game, hardly interacting with the story at all. The game featured a massive open world that you could traverse on horseback. There were several legacy dungeons as well as side quests, providing the player with a seemingly endless quantity of adventure. However, after a few months of the game being within the public consciousness, all the secrets had been explored, every path taken, and everything more or less solved.
Unfortunately, Ronnie,
You said this would happen.
our summer fling is over.
It turned out that the endless game full of adventure did, in fact, have an end point. In some ways, the game was over. Sure, you could start a new playthrough, do some co-op or invasions, or advance all the way to New Game Plus 7, but eventually, the well would run dry. This was when talk of the DLC really ramped up, with speculation both on the lore side and the challenge side. Were the bosses going to be hard? Would they be as hard as Melania? Is Godwyn going to be the final boss? boss? Would we ever meet kind Mikola? What would fighting Radahn be like when he was in his prime? Would we be entering the NPC's dreams because of Saint Trina's sleep abilities? Would we go back in time before the Shattering? What were the lore implications? Then, on the 1-year anniversary of the game's release, From Software shared this image. A new world that we haven't seen before. Something that looks like Mikola riding a horsey. It was real, and it was coming soon. The community entered an uproar. Holy shit, it's really coming. I bet it's going to be huge. Maybe it'll be the size of the whole map. Maybe we'll finally meet Mikola. Is Mikola the good guy or the bad guy? Well, he certainly looks like Griffith from Berserk. That means he's going to be bad, right? I'm sure you wish to know just what kind Mikola is doing here in the Land of Shadow. All we got was a name, Shadow of the Erdtree. Spiffy. Then, just like with the base game, we had to wait and see. No new information arrived. There wasn't a trailer or release date, just the one image. 1 year passed without anything. The community re-entered the hollowing.
It never happened. We made this one up. It's fiction. We made up this one. We made it up.
We all replayed Elden Ring over and over again. YouTube channels dedicated to fighting Malenia every single day until the DLC began to spring up. After a year, the players got very, very good at it. Then, all of a sudden, after a year of waiting, we finally got to see something.
Pure and radiant, he wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
Damn, everyone on Earth said in simultaneous surprise. That looks dope. But the release date was set for another 3 months out, so the community went back to waiting. This time with feverish guesswork on what the DLC would entail. What the fuck is kind Mikola doing there? I have to know. There was much speculation, and those 3 months passed so slowly that it felt like every few minutes were a year. When would we get a good look at it? I have to see it and know that it's real. I have to play this game. Then, at the end of that 3-month period, the game finally arrived.
The Outsiders. Ponyboy. Dallas. Johnny. Cherry. Soda Pop. Daryl. 2-Bit. Steve. Bob. Six-Pack. Dad. E.T. Bumblebee Tuna. Clamshell. Inspector Gadget. Payless Shoes. Death. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Kid Cuisine. Johnny.
Elden Ring, DLC. Elden Ring, DLC.
At long last, behold, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree is finally here. Just looking at the map, there's so many places to explore, so many new bosses and NPCs. Everything old is new again. Right off the main road, you see this little place with all these grave birds and these cute blue wormy guys. And it sends you right back to the first time you saw Limgrave from the base game. It's a lush and endless world with so many cool corners to explore. Like for instance, I found this little crypt here. And what do you know? There's a boss gate. Right off the get-go, they're already throwing a new boss at us. Well, shit. Let's see what it's all about.
Emotional damage!
God, the characters are lame. I'm a loser. I wish I was dead. Oh!
The first thing you need to do is go around the whole fucking endless world and pick up as many of these Erdtree fragments as possible so you can play the game without getting shredded every few seconds. For context, the Erdtree fragment gives you extra scaling for the difficulty of the DLC to prevent you from getting one-shot by a fucking crab or something. Everything you see in the world and think is unassuming and maybe even friendly will utterly destroy you without these fragments. You'd better find them. Can you find them all? Well, I sure hope so, or you're going to have a bad time. After doing 30 minutes of fuck about in the vertically liminal shadow world to find specific items that are both easy and hard to find, you finally stumble yourself ass first into your first legacy dungeon. Congratulate yourself on this achievement. I know it sounds like I'm criticizing the game, but I assure you, all of this is somehow a benefit. You're going to love dying over and over to seemingly everything, as is customary. It's at this point that the revelation should be dawning on you. Oh fuck, it's like I'm starting all over again. Everything old is new again. For a Souls veteran, this is a very exciting feeling, and the one that we have been chasing for multiple years now. Taking your best character and running it straight into a brick wall. It's the correct way of experiencing this DLC. It's hard to even call this a DLC. It feels like an all-new game in the lands between because you truly are starting from scratch. If the game came out and it was only marginally scaled up in difficulty, we would blow through it in a couple hours, have ourselves a laugh, but ultimately feel disappointment. But no, this is a Souls game. It has to be hard, and it has to be a complex mess of ideas that you, the player, have to parse out and find some kind of linearity in. It enhances the idea that you're the only person that will have your individual experience within the game. Some people explore the DLC and they come upon this screaming man on the ground and they're like, oh shit, something crazy must be this direction. I'm going this way. Then they come upon a silly dragon man that will utterly destroy you. For instance, streamer Barbaros King followed this path fairly early and stumbled upon one of the craziest bosses in Souls history, Baal the Dread.
Like every time I do something, I'm punished, roll, punished, attack, punished, heal, punished. Like every fucking thing I do, I'm being punished for it. Everything I do, I am punished. Like there's no like, oh, okay, yeah, you got away with that one. No, every single thing is a punish.
And he died. But in my first playthrough, I didn't go fight Baal until nearly the end, and it only took me a couple tries to end this man's entire career. Of course, with the help of the greatest NPC in the history of video games.
Stop saying dumbass things. You're not even making sense.
Curse you, Baal! I hereby vow you will rue this day. Solid of scale you might be, foul dragon, but I will riddle with holes your rotten hide.
Most players simply turn at this grace and go straight into Bellarat, run through the dungeon, and immediately try fighting the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. They often go in there without ever collecting a single Scattertree fragment. How do I know this? Well, I've been playing an awful lot of friendly cooperation and watched the hosts die over and over and over again. However, I followed this main path, did my little 30-minute fuck about to collect my Scadu, got fucking annihilated by seemingly everything in the dungeon several times, and then decided, as a bit, to challenge the Dancing Lion a bit too early, just to see what it was like.
Cleanse away the strumpet's fire.
What I discovered in the first fight was something that would turn out to be the single thing that would carry me through my entire playthrough. Bleed, as a mechanic, is broken as fuck. For those unaware of this mechanic, it's a bar that builds up as you attack an enemy, and when it peaks, it does like 10 to 20% of a boss's health bar. Luckily, I was spec'd for this from the start. I made the Dancing Lion bleed gallons of blood all over the theater floor. It's important to admit something here. I have played Elden Ring a lot over the last couple of years. In the hollowing, or what I'd rather call the edging period of Shadow of the Erdtree, I played through Elden Ring about 100 times. I even got a speedrun route down to 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's not a good enough speedrun to justify a place on the leaderboard, but nevertheless, I was satisfied in my prowess. I say all of this to say two things. Number one, if I had an easier time with the DLC than most people, I had a little too much practice. And number two, I did kind of expect to shred this expansion in very little time, and I was confoundingly wrong. I felt every ounce of the rage and frustration that everyone else seemingly felt on release. I explored the entire expansion, desperately trying to keep up with the ramping difficulty, always asking myself if I was under level, or if I just didn't know the boss or enemy timings. Every time I turned a corner and saw something awful standing there, menacing, I thought, okay, so I'm dead, right? I felt utterly hopeless at times, especially in the latter portions when it felt like every boss had so many particle effects and AoEs that I couldn't even keep an eye on the sword swings, and I died a billion, million times. A billion times. The conditioning took hold and I got to a place where I saw a boss door and immediately knew I would be there for several hours. There are a few bosses that even had hitboxes that made me feel like the game itself was unfair. Specifically Gaius, the guy that does the fucked up charge attack that still hits you even if you roll away. And Mesmer the Impaler, who turns into snakes that can hit you even if you aren't near it. And this fucking flower. Oh my god. I hate this fucking flower.
Do you believe in the power of a curse?
Nevertheless, I did beat the game, but on my first try, the final boss genuinely felt impossible, which is something I've never felt when playing any of these games before. More context. I played Dark Souls 1 upon release, and I fell into its grasp with my whole self, devoting many days or weeks to playing it over and over and over again. Those who watched me on Twitch know that I speedran DS1 over COVID-19, and I once got a time down to a little over an hour. I say this to say that when a boss feels impossible to me, something extraordinary has occurred here. Long gone are the days of lowly Sif the dog that has a phase 2 where it limps around and the game emotionally tugs at you to just let it kill you because it's just so pathetic. But you have to get over it and do it nonetheless to progress the game. This ain't no semen of dong fight, that's for sure. Now the game's like, mother. And then a guy tears off his arms, revealing 2 shotguns, and he blows your fucking head off while jumping and comboing on you for 5 minutes. This gives rise to a new term that I'd like to coin if I can, the Souls Boomer. I blame this largely for much of the criticism the DLC has received. It's always been hard, but now it's exhausting. And I mean literally, like playing these boss fights feels draining of the spirit. You genuinely don't think it's possible. I beat Shadow of the Erdtree about after 40 hours of the life that God gave me, but there were moments where I felt utterly lost. I felt like a Souls boomer. I'm getting old. But there was a moment, a magical moment, where much like Dark Souls 1, I realized something. Forsake your nobility, put away your pride, kill the boss by any means necessary. So I went and I got the fingerprint shield and the Anspur rapier, which, as you may know, procs Scarlet Rot, which is a very fast-acting poison, but it also procs bleed. Then I overloaded myself with armor and I decided to get the final boss sick. I gave him COVID. I made myself an unkillable tank so that I could watch him die of disease before my very eyes. It took nearly 3 hours, but eventually I reached the near end of the fight. The final boss, Radon and Mikola respectively, jumps out of the arena and blasts into space. Okay, I thought, it's almost over. I can do this. But then Radon crashes back to Earth with the force of a motherfucking meteor, and it broke right through my armor and killed me. I went to bed, very sad. But when I woke up in the morning, I wanted vengeance. I wanted blood. I wanted his head on a pike. The gloves came off even further. I decided I couldn't entirely be a tank. I had to be able to roll. For those uninitiated, the roll mechanic is very abusable in these games because it gives you invincibility frames. So if I was able to get to the same point with the meteor, then just roll through the explosion, I could survive and the archangels would take him. The last thing he would see was the price tag. After only 4 more attempts, I rolled the meteor and he died, giving me the final cutscene, and it was over. It was not impossible. Nothing is impossible for a tarnished. How about that? It's at this point that I bring up a recent interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki, the game's devious foot fetishist and mastermind.
So with your permission, I'd like to take this guy on a boat, and then once he's trapped at sea, teach him a lesson he'll never forget.
Who famously doesn't play his own games because they are too hard. He said that in preparation for the DLC, he finally played through the base game Elden Ring. He said it was hard, but he used everything in the game at his disposal to finish it. He did it without nobility. Herein lies a truth to these games that no one is ever willing to accept in the critical communities. Getting good is one thing, but another thing is that the game literally has an easy mode in it. There has been so much discourse around the idea that these games need an easy mode and how it's unfair to bad players to prevent them from beating the games. But take a page out of Miyazaki's book here. There are fucking thousands of things in this game. Weapons, items, craftables, armor, talismans. If you want to cheese the game, you can. It's all right there if you just know what to do. The game also encourages player communications with messages.
Bird up!
And summons within the game.
It's one thing for Brian to track 1 of me, but let's see how he does with 9 of me.
As well as builds shared amongst the community. The answers are out there if you just go looking. It is a hilarious coincidence that after I beat Radon in the DLC, I began doing co-op and found that many of the people that were summoning me were also wielding the fingerprint shield and the Ansper rapier. Then, when I dug through the many fan reddits, I found the meme that many were sharing that this build, the one I stumbled on, was used by thousands of players having trouble beating Radon. The DLC has done a lot of things, but one is encourage players to get creative with their builds and generate ideas on how to figure out how to kill it. When it's dead, it doesn't matter how you did it, the god is still slain, and you have slain it. Funnily enough, after a couple days passed, YouTube began to fill out with videos of people beating Radon in 2 hits. And then beating Radon in 1 hit. Parrying him. Taking no damage at all, killing him at soul level 1. As the game fills out, more and more people are finding ways of taking down what I deemed impossible only a day or 2 earlier, once again proving that there's nothing truly impossible in these games. Everything is cheesable, everything is easy if you just figure out how to approach it. It turns out that figuring out how to approach it is the game. The difficulty is only there to make you use the game in different ways. In that way, the game fulfills its main objective. It is a new From Software game that asks you to find a way to face down insurmountable odds and come out victorious. The joke has always been that the world is a cruel place, so why should the worlds of Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or Elden Ring be any different? But there's truth to it. Elden Ring says that if God gives you lemons, you kill God. You see how fucked up the world is, and you can give up, or you can grab a sword and kick its fucking ass. It's an exercise in feeling a determination to get through the true challenges of life and grab it by the balls. In a world that is increasingly shitty, that could not be more resonant or important.
Snake eyes! Ah! Idiot teeth! Oh, hammerhead! Oh no! Pussycat! Pussycat puss! Batman! Double header! Pickle puss! Pumpkinhead! Neon noodle! Jokebox jaw! Wolfman!
Elden Ring DLC. Elden Ring DLC.
So I just beat the first legacy dungeon and I decide to approach the second one. Again, I blast through it with force, being killed by soldiers, dogs, and wizards. There are way too many wizards in my neighborhood. But at long last, behold, a boss door for the second remembrance boss of the DLC, Relana, the sister of Renala from the base game. Their parents had to have an impossible time getting their attention when it was supper time. My bleed build serves me well on my first attempts, but the ops take me. I can't handle phase 2 when she utterly explodes into a burst of fire and magic that would make any wizard drop their spellbook and shit their pants. She kills me and my narcissistic copy like frying an egg. She drops me like $1 in a toll booth. This shit is nothing to her, man, but to me, it was my life. So I decide that it's time for some light questing. I decide to have a few elegant conversations with the game's many NPCs, and I learn what it is we're actually doing here in Vietnam. Why is it that our boys are being sent here in droves? What's this war all about, anyway? That brings us to the DLC's main story. There are many stories, but this one is the one that brought us here. To enter the DLC, you have to kill both bosses Radon and Moog in order to gain access to the withered arm of kindly Mikola, the greatest person to ever exist in the lands between. He is widely regarded as a saint in the main game, even though we kill his whole family, including his twin sister, which is awkwardly never mentioned in the DLC, even though one might think that would be a bummer for him. Either way, we don't ever get the chance to speak to Mikola for the entire game. Instead, we learn of Mikola's travels through both these NPCs and the crosses Mikola leaves in the world, revealing different parts of himself he has divested in order to become a god. Is it a good or bad thing that he's decided to become a god? I don't really know, but it matters very little because this game is about killing gods with your little prison shank tainted with COVID. So we know he's probably going to be our final boss in some fashion. The NPCs have differing opinions on Mikola and whether or not he's a good dude. Lita thinks he's the greatest, most specialist person that were ever born, where Ansbach thinks that he's a monster set on a course to do terrible things.
He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
But what we don't know is that there's a secret charm over the whole land, and after we cross a certain point, the charm is broken, and everyone breaks rank. They all begin to give their real opinions on what kindly Mikola is doing here. But there's much complication to this problem. See, following the main game story where we learn there is a god named Marika that is supposedly a bad ruler who must die. So we kill all of her children, and even her in the soul of Radagon, a broken red-haired man, and also a big glowing beast. We learn that she obtained godhood here in the Land of Shadow. She has abandoned her son Mesmer here to do a crusade against the Hornsent that live there, thus inciting some kind of holy war that's never ending. When we arrive, much war is still being done, although there is a clear winner in Mesmer the Impaler. His name, by the way, is Mesmer the Impaler, like Dracula. The divine beast Dancing Lion is a weaponized magical dancer that is used to fight Mesmer, while Relana, the sword wizard that keeps putting fireballs in my path, is in love with him. The Hornsent wishes to put Mesmer in a grave, and many agree that Mesmer is a horrible warlord, even though they haven't even tried to have a beer with him yet. You know, for nuance's sake. So it's very clear that we need to kill Mesmer and all those that associate with him, in addition to killing Mikola. To make matters worse, it becomes revealed by Ansbach that Mikola has stolen Moog's body to put Radon, his brother's, soul into, so that Radon can be Mikola's consort to become a god. This is an added absurdity on top of all the other ones, so it can be assumed that we will also be killing Radon. There are a lot of conflicting opinions on this. When the DLC began to leak a couple days before release, most people were good about avoiding particular spoilers, but me, I'm constructed in an odd way. I wanted the spoilers. I wanted to see what I was up against. In finding out it was Radon, I was kind of like, really? Really?
What the fuck? What the fuck? What have they done to us?
What did they do to?
Seemingly, this was the reaction of the entire community. For one, a lot of people were expecting to fight Mikola, but also Godwyn, or the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Instead, we get tiny Prime Radon. Everyone was upset about this. Your grandmother was also upset about this. Much has been said about From Software reusing boss fights in a copy-paste-like manner to fill out the vast open world, but there were some that saw this as, well, that. Others questioned whether or not this even made sense within the lore, which admittedly doesn't need to make sense because From Software lore rarely does. But George R.R. Martin? I don't know if this is his responsibility. Either way, this landed with a thud in the community, although the chance of the final boss of the DLC truly satisfying everyone is kind of an impossible feat. The jank and the insane difficulty didn't help much either. Either way, there is something very absurd about the entire lore surrounding Mikola ultimately ending in him pursuing godhood using Radon of all the guys.
Does this story seem possible? Was the morgue attendant in on the deception too? Were there gases trapped within the milk bucket that caused the activity? How was the doctor able to send email without a computer? Was the sewing machine taken over by the spirit of Byron's grandmother? Could a plant really identify a murderer?
Somehow this helped Moog beat the allegations though, so that's sick. We enjoy some light absolution. We even tell Moog's right-hand man that we had to kill him, which he is strangely fine with.
Oh. Something you want to get off your chest? Well, you needn't worry. It was you, wasn't it? Who defeated Lord Moog. Fear not. I bear no grudge against you. His Eminence was felled in an honorable duel.
Nevertheless, in order to buy into the questlines in this DLC, you have to put aside any woes you might be feeling about the way that all of this shakes out and just try to enjoy yourself. And enjoy yourself, you do! Much is said about kind Mikola's journey to godhood. So much, in fact, that Eurogamer gave the DLC 3 stars for being too obvious. They were criticized plenty for being the only reviewer to trash its essentially perfect score before release, but I will admit, they sure do cram this story in your face to make it make sense.
Don't you dare approach Mikola the Kind.
Which is something From Software is not really known for doing. It all kind of comes across like last-second tinkering to make a justified change or something, which of course led to speculation that Godwyn was supposed to be the final boss of this DLC, but that was changed at the last minute so the rest of the game needed to adapt. I don't know if these rumors are true, but in playing through the questlines, I guess I can see it. In short, something amazing ahead. Victory, oh victory. Try good luck. I feel for Vati here, who will now spend the next few months of his life trying to make sense of all of this. Although, as a game in and of itself, it's pretty freaking good. Lore be damned. Just like everything else in these games, sure, the community will be confused and in an uproar for a while, but over time we will come around to accepting it until something else weird happens. Probably involving feet. The George R.R. Martin angle is the part that makes me think the most, however. I mean, the guy sure is an incredible writer, we can all agree of that. So it's at least somewhat assumed that at least some of this has something to do with him. He wrote somewhat of a lore bible for Elden Ring that the game was built around, seemingly devoted to. And while it is a Japanese game made by a Japanese company, the George R.R. Martin influence feels very present within the game's world. The main villain of the whole game's story is named Marika. You know, like Marika. And she abandons one of her sons to do an endless war in a faraway land. Geez, that could be read into if someone wanted to do the due diligence. Anyway, she creates a magical tree that fools everyone into thinking that they are free from death, even as they grow progressively more and more undead. All her children are rulers in their own political factions, and each of them are corrupted in their own way, either for a lust for power or for, well, okay, generally it's a lust for power. Mikola is no different, it seems. He's like, I'm gonna rule the world through compassion. And the compassion part is great, but I'm sorry, did you just say you're going to rule the world? That sounds bad. So there's a bit of obvious political commentary in Elden Ring that shouldn't be overlooked, although it can be overlooked because the game's so fucking fun. You pick up a big sword and start cutting them down. You ride around on horseback, carving fools up in your path to some weird part of the game that could have a crazy boss in it. Or it could have nothing.
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
The choice is yours. Well, actually, the choice was from Software's, and sometimes they just didn't put anything there for you to find. Oh well. That brings up another aspect of conversation. The idea that a boss is an end unto itself. In one part of the game, you stumble upon the Abyssal Woods, which is actually my favorite place in the DLC. You have to do these stealth quests, and you can't use your horse because he's scared. But also, what the fuck? Your horse doesn't seem to mind riding around in places where people can hit it with a big fuck-off sword. But whatever, you're on foot. And you gotta avoid these megamind fuckers that'll suck your brain out. So you avoid those, go into a shithole gank fight that sucks, then you find yourself at Midra's Manor. Wow. Exciting. You get a couple of scraps of lore. Supposedly a titular Midra is a guy that's been mega tortured trying to become the Lord of Madness, which seemingly led to the death of his loved ones. Now he's pissed and in a little room, but you gank the old man to death, allowing one to live out the fantasy of getting 3 guys together and beating the ever-loving piss out of your dad.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
It's funny, but then he rips his head off. It's replaced with the sun, and then he's the lord of the frenzy flame. So you kill the shit out of him and he goes down because he's one of the fairest fights in the whole DLC. But after he's dead, no cutscene. What? No ending to that story? Was the end that he died?
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
You can explore this area endlessly, but you won't ever learn another goddamn thing. That's the end. The boss itself is the end. This is a characteristic that felt lacking to me in the DLC. I didn't need more fights, I needed more closure. I want to interact with the story of the game more, but it's very unceremonious. Once the boss is dead, that's it. And that's essentially how the whole DLC operates. You expect some kind of big revealing or emotional cutscene at the very end of the DLC, but instead, nope, you just see Miquella asking Radahn to honor the vow of becoming his consort. Then you stand at the gate of divinity with your thumb up your ass, looking around for something. Anything. But alas, you did it. That's the end. Exit through the gift shop.
I hope you're hungry for nothing.
I guess I wanted more? I wanted more lore? God, who am I? Anymore? Okay, hyperbole and general jokes about the absurdity of the lore and the nail-biting difficulty aside, I feel that it's necessary to break kayfabe a bit here and say what I truly think. I'm very excited about this DLC for its size and its complexity, as well as the fun of a new challenge. While I've been attempting to tabulate the diverse reaction this DLC has had, it's crucial to mention the fun and excitement that comes from the new challenge. You know, the fingerprint shield and spurt rapier build is cheesy, thus in many parts of the community, it's seen as casual. The myriad of ways that people have been breaking the DLC have all been seen as kind of avoidance of the direct challenge. I get this. It's worth mentioning that the most rewarding aspect of any From Software release is replayability. We have to take time to get good at these games, and while the get good sentiment is often true, that's an experience that takes time. So remember back to your first encounter with these games and how hard it was to wrap your head around that particular challenge. You know, with the bar being raised in a significant way, it's gonna take time for the larger community to catch up. The Souls boomers like me have grown slow in our old age. You know, I've gotten soft, and I'll be the first to admit that. So on my second playthrough, I've been just shredding the game with the Bloodhound Fang, which remains one of the best speedrun weapons. If you see repeated footage throughout this review, it's because I beat most of the bosses easily and on my first attempt during my second playthrough. Although Radahn is still kicking my ass, largely for the complex moveset that has a lot of ins and outs. It's tough to eat a mistake in that fight because it typically puts you too far behind to succeed, where that isn't quite as true with the other fights. All of this is to say that while I'm expressing some frustrations and some general criticisms, I think the DLC is actually really incredible and incredibly fun. Frustrations are actually part of the experience. Ultimately, Souls games are about being a knight that says fuck a lot. It's a salty pirate kind of narrative game that you just have to kind of get on its level eventually, and it's about hating the fun you're having. Even the lore ins and outs are mostly justified by the game being about the world of death and how Mikkel the Kind abandoned the things that made him to end up becoming just like his mother. It's less a criticism of him and more a criticism of the power of godhood and what one gives away to become a god. It's speaking truth to power. That makes a lot of direct sense to me, and while the lore is simultaneously spelled out for us and a bit light on cutscenes and secrets, that's kind of the regular MO for these games. I feel for those that wanted more. I mean, shit, I wanted more, but these games never let the lore distract from the gameplay experience. We're meant to learn more by playing and not through the things the game shoves down our throats. So, in conclusion, the DLC ain't so bad, kids. Leave it alone. Now back to having fun being frustrated with it. This has been a PSA on why I'm doing this. Please don't take everything I say so seriously, please.
Elden Ring, DLC. Elden Ring, DLC.
Alright, so it's time to fight Mesmer. It's important to note that the footage you're seeing is from my second playthrough.
Emotional damage!
Call me a bad gamer, but I was stuck on Mesmer for quite a while my first time. I saw a diverse reaction to this boss. Some were beating it in a couple tries, learned the timings, and just kicked his ass. Good job! Others were stuck here for hours, even though they had collected the necessary scadu. As much as the learn the moveset, get good thing is kind of true, I will admit that it's a bit hard to do when the amount of particle effects that often hit you even if you dodge them do slightly get in the way of your learning curve. You end up grinding it a bit more than you'd expect. There's something a little new I noticed here, and I doubt I was the only one who did. The bosses aren't really doing their moveset in any kind of patternistic or predictable manner. Sometimes when you go in for the punish, the boss reacts to that. If you heal, the boss is ready to punish you. If you roll, the next combo is already lined up to roll catch you. Because of this and the sheer amount of damage the sword swing does, you die an awful lot of times here, often without learning anything. This can feel overwhelming in a rather new way. Even while it's really exciting and reactive gameplay, it feels like a fight. This dude wants to kill you. Sometimes it feels like he's really defending himself from you killing him. It's energetic and frenetic and very exciting. Such is the trade-off of what I guess I would call new Souls combat. This was something that people talked about with the base game on release. The combat felt way different in comparison to something like Dark Souls 2, and you know what? Thank God for that. But really, when you watch them side by side, they don't even look comparable. This is a whole new world of combat from prior games. This is probably what led a lot of players to review bomb the game for its difficulty upon release. Much was said about this one AoE. I don't know which AoE it was because a lot of people wanted to avoid spoiling the game, but myself and everyone else included assumed that they meant the big AoE that Radon does. Now that the game is out, I kinda think they might have been talking about Mesmer. I feel like a lot of people never beat him. Not because he's that much more impossible than anything in the base game. Shit, he's got nothing on Melania. But nevertheless, the people had some trouble with the snakes. I think this snake explosion on phase 2 might have been that mythical evil AoE that some people dealt with. Sometimes you roll or get out of the way and you still die. That gets a little tedious when you barely made it to phase 2 in the first place. But to be fair, and also honest, this is what we wanted and expected from a DLC. It's going to be more of the same, just a little bit more maximal. Although damn, we did not know what more maximal was going to look like from a From Software context. This is an entirely new world of pain in comparison to even Elden Ring. It makes a lot of the main game look modest by comparison. However, none of this is all that new. Just bigger. It's the same things, just written in Sharpie instead of pen. In the same way that the Godskin duo fight is just Orenstein and Smo, but longer, with more AoEs, a crazy fast roll attack that you fucking hate. This DLC is playing the hits. Do you like dragon fights? Well, oh boy, these dragons are the same, but they spit ghost flame and they summon bullshit skeleton guys that gank you while you're trying to fight a fucking dragon. Do you like dragons? Well, these shoot death lasers all over the goddamn place. Do you like dragons? Well, this is Bale. He's an evil, terrible dragon that has so many AoEs that it'll make your fucking head spin. You're gonna love it because you love dragons. Did you enjoy fighting Elden Beast? I know you didn't. Here's Elden Beast made out of sinister hands and fingers. Check out this insane AoE it does. Wow, it's so crazy, but it's kind of the same. And you're gonna love it because you love the Elden Beast and Astel. Or you know what? It's actually an awful lot like the one reborn from Bloodborne. Come on, you see it. Think about it. This one was the first one to reach the lands between. It's the very important one. Give this some thought for the next 5 years while we wait for the next game. Mithra is kind of like the Nameless King, only not on a chicken. Putrescent Knight is kind of like the Orphan of Kos, but substantially easier and not as disgusting. Wait, hold on. Do you like hot women attached to hideous bugs? You know, like Najka or Quaylock, but this one is bigger and crazy and procs Scarlet Rot and goes kaboom!
That's gonna kill me! That's real! That lives with us on her!
It's Ramina, Saint of the Bud. She's kind of like those other bosses, but she's supercharged. Come to think of it, Commander Gaius is an awful lot like the Dragonic Tree Sentinel, huh? Well, except that he has that evil demonic charge attack that makes you regret being born. But other than that, Scadu Tree Avatar, more like Curse Rotten Greatwood, only instead of a pustule weakness, you hit it in the face. Instead of 2 phases, you got 3. To return to a previous point I made, Mesmer is a lot of things, but he is not as hard as Melania. But he wants to be. He's trying, but he doesn't get his health back. He just has more health. He doesn't hit as reactively, but he hits way harder. He doesn't give you Scarlet Rot, but he does kill you with 1 grab attack. He doesn't have Waterfowl Dance, but he does have this insane combo that kills 100% of the players that summon me to help with the fight. Every fucking time. I swear. This begs a very big question here. Where does FromSoft really go from here? These are all similar boss designs that they've been perfecting slowly for their entire lineage, and here they are born their most insane maximal form. What's next? Are they going to release a very quiet game where the bosses are slow and take a long time to fight, patiently and with intent? You know, I doubt it. I think it might turn out to be like this. But again, it's hard to imagine a game both more reactive and playable / enjoyable as this, and also anything more maximal. They really can't just remake the same ideas over and over with more crazy attacks and combo chains without people noticing and getting burned out. It's so easy to predict at this point that you could successfully just call the bosses Bug, Eldritch Horror, Magic Swords Master, Melania, but different, Horsey Guy, Dragon Boss, and Motherfucking Badass. And who could forget Living Tree? Miyazaki recently said that he still hasn't made his ideal RPG, and I believe him. Oh boy, do I want to see him make that game. But I'd also love to see him come up with some brand new ideas that really blow our mind, because I'm beginning to feel some fatigue from Amazing Chest Ahead and Night Guy, who's simply built different. It's a true sign of fatigue when difficulty means just extending combo chains and making the boss explode a bunch. challenge. It's not really new, just harsh. And harshness, a new thing, does not make. I will still play and enjoy every game that From Software makes from now until the end of time, but something about this makes me yearn for the sleeper hit Armored Core 6, where everything did kind of feel fresh and unique. It was a bit too easy if you grab yourself the rocket scooter chair and you just spam explosions to kill bosses, but
about halfway into my playthrough, I came up with this wheelchair robot with dual Gatling guns. This thing is unstoppable, and it completely trivialized the game.
But it was very genuinely fun the first time I played it. I think a lot of people would argue that Bloodborne was also hella fun for changing up the formula so drastically. I like that! I want to see more of that for sure. I will buy your greatest hits album, Mr. Miyazaki, but I'd love to hear some new music.
Elden Ring, DLC. Elden Ring, DLC.
We do some side bosses and get jostled a lot, we find more fragments, but eventually we just start clearing the game the fuck out. They're dying left and right to my sword. I ain't even having a hard time anymore. We are cooking these fools. But my score still reads whack if you ask me. Either way, it's time for our final run of bosses, and boy am I excited to fight Master Badass yet again. And to know that he doesn't even have a final cutscene, well geez, I sure am excited. I think this is a good opportunity to wrap it all up into a neat little package. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree is dope. If a little light on the things that maybe matter, but maybe they don't. On replayability, I don't really know. It's fun to fight all these bosses and further explore the world, but we waited a couple of years for an expansion and we consumed it pretty dang quick. There's a void somewhere now. I mean, we got our game, but now we want a new game. This is a decent satiation to our needs, but it wasn't the be-all end-all experience that maybe we thought it would be, which is mostly our fault. It fulfills an awful lot of challenge run potential. There's some more lore for Vati. It's easily the biggest and probably the best DLC I've ever played, but it is more Elden Ring in a time where I've been playing Elden Ring for 2 years. We made some new friends along the way, got some smattering of a new story. We faced down insurmountable challenges. We even used some really neat new weapons with Ashes of War that will most certainly get you punished for using. R1s and jumping R2s are still the meta, it turns out. Did we get what we thought we wanted? You know, I don't know. Do we like this? Certainly.
Bird up!
Time will prove the DLC to be incredible, and we will get used to seeing this in all of our speedruns. Our favorite game just got longer by a lot, and that's fantastic. But maybe, just maybe, what we all really wanted was a new game. I mean a very new game, one in a world that we don't understand yet, one with bosses that are truly unpredictable, that force us into a place where we have to relearn how to play these games. I guess we did get that in a way, but I think there's another specific feeling that these games conjure and always have. We want a meal when we play a game. Not just some meat, not just a veggie. We want to eat the whole plate and feel very full. When Elden Ring came out 2 years ago, I ate that plate and I felt full. With this, I ate the plate a couple of times and it's a very good meal. But I feel like at the end of the day, I'm still hungry. Thus ends our food metaphor. There's always disappointment lying in wait right after the feeling of utter victory. We feel that sense of completion and we lay back and we bask in victory for a while, but then this other thing creeps in, our other self. We all feel it, and we know it isn't fair to feel, yet we feel it all the same. I'm still hungry. I don't want it to be over yet. I want more, not just more, but different, significant. I want to explore something new. I want to die to something stupid. I want to wear a silly hat. I want to be summoned in someone's world and do something really stupid. I want to climb every mountain. I want to be a wretch and learn how to kill a god. I don't want to go back to the real world where you really can't just pick up a sword and solve the world's problems. I want to go back in and it be different every time I do. I want another From Software game. We need a new DLC. We need a new DLC. We need a new game. We need to kill a new god. My lust for blood is never ending. I need more. But games take time. Stories are hard to tell in video games. Worlds are hard to build. Bosses are hard to design in a challenging yet fun way. These things take a lot of time, manpower, and money. While we have given From Software an incredible amount of money, and while they undoubtedly have an insane amount of manpower now, these things still take time, so we will have to wait. But I don't want to go hollow. I don't want to go hollow. It would be such a shame to see yourself go hollow, but here I go. I'm going hollow.
You should pack your things and go.
You sure?
This is the constant push-pull relationship we have with From Software games. When one comes out, even if it's just a DLC, it is an event. We freak the fuck out. When it's over, we are unsatisfied. When I think back over the course of my life, I can almost tabulate the events of my life through the lens of Souls games. I remember who I was when Dark Souls came out, and Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 3 came out while I was too busy to play it, but I eventually did, and I felt like an idiot for waiting. I played Bloodborne at a friend's house back when I lived in Texas. Now I've moved. I've gotten so much older. I played Elden Ring on my bed next to my girlfriend who wanted to learn all the game's secrets but felt intimidated by the difficulty. We own a house now. She speedruns Elden Ring now. We have a dog. We call our dog a foul beast in jest.
And the intensity of stupidity that is looking back at you is just amazing.
And Shadow of the Erdtree came out when I was 31, overworked and underpaid in the midst of writing my third book, sitting on the couch in my house while a bear ate out of our garbage can right outside. Where will I be when the next one comes out? Who will I be? No matter where or who I am, I will stop everything. The silence will seem deafening, and I will sit down to play it over and over. I will beat it too fast, and I will regret it. I will wish that I'd have savored the experience longer. But just like everything in From Software games, it's an analog for life. When the things you enjoy in life are over, you're never going to ask yourself if you worked hard enough or if you earned your victory. You're going to wish you spent more time enjoying it. Thanks for watching.